All of these things, I was thinking, what? So it was one thing after another. And then, of course, Jeremy not having the whip suspended, and then having gone through the disciplinary process and what have you, there was political interference, in my opinion, with that, with the NEC ruling, and the whip has still, to this day, not been returned to Jeremy. Although I've gone so far in my disaffection with Labour, I would prefer Jeremy to stay out. I know the demands to return the whip to Jeremy, but I would much prefer Jeremy to stay out and to work at growing the democratic socialist movement, which is what I'm about now, which I'll come to later.
Excellent, Dan. Excellent way to start it. Dan, are we coming off a high or what?
I'm feeling very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I have something very special for you today.
Oh my God, dear listener. Dear listener. I know usually we do a bit of faff.
Yeah.
There's no real faff. Dan's drinking a good cup of tea that I made.
Yeah.
It's fake news.
What's going on? It's going to stop raining tomorrow. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. No more rain ever, and we'll be happy with that. I got foxes back in the goddamn allotment last night after I thought I put up all of my anti-fox devices, and it was fine for a week. Mm-hmm. They're back. They're messing with my onions. I say now it's war. That's what I say.
I was invited to book a slot to get a vaccine today.
Were you?
Oh, they finally got to the over 30s. Although there isn't one in Canterbury at the moment, so I might have to trek all the way to Ramsgate or something. I don't know why.
Listeners getting a peek at how old Dan is. I am 19, just so everybody knows.
I was contemplating making some kind of joke about they got to the 30s today, so there's another 5 years and then I can have it. But
yeah.
No.
I would like to point out literally every single person that I work with has it, and I'm not going to get it for like a bit.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah, they're making quick progress. I think you'll be
That's
surprised.
What they say.
You'll be surprised.
Yeah. Oh, well. Vaccine talk. Everybody's always talking which vaccine you're going to get, which one you're going to get. Oh, you got this one. You got that one. Just give me a vaccine. I don't know. Just give me any vaccine. That's what I say.
I want the Pfizer one. It's all kind of, it's like sci-fi.
Why?
Because it's the one where they've like written some, it's basically like writing new code and putting it into your genes.
Wait a minute. You're telling me they put a microchip in this thing?
Well, that's what I heard.
All right.
I'm quite looking forward to being a cyborg.
Yeah. I say, why not? I say, give me the chip.
Nice. Give me the chip.
Give me the goddamn chip. I saw some...
Just as long as I don't have to have COVID.
Yeah. I'll take a chip.
Yeah, whatever.
Bill Gates wants to sell me some more stuff. Sure. More stuff I won't buy. Why not? I saw some conspiracy theorist on Twitter was like, you guys, it's all wrong. They're actually giving you the vaccine to take out a chip. It's just like, right on. All right. I'm behind that.
Yeah, there's a real take.
Now I'm anti-chip. Pro chips, though, and I might get some after this. Dan, what did we just get done doing? Because it kind of rocked.
Yeah, we just completed an interview with the delightful Thelma Walker. Who was... did a very brief stint as a Labour Party MP between 2017 and 2019. Has done the honourable thing that I've not done yet, which is leave the Labour Party. And has now knocking around with a new bunch of kids on the block in the Northern Independence Party.
The Northern Independence Party, a democratic socialist party advocating, Dan, for independence from Westminster. Folks, you've heard a lot about UKIP. You've heard we got to get rid of Brussels. We got to, end Westminster, all of this. I'm not going to comment on any of that. I think it's fair to say that Dan and I are nowhere close to enjoying these UKIP fellows. But tell you what, I'm not a fan of Westminster. I've said it. Hey, call me crazy, but I've said it. I think these folks are onto something.
Yeah. I'm on board.
And it's interesting, folks, because you'll hear Thelma Walker here in just a moment talk about a new kind of coalition of democratic socialist parties that are not part of the Labour Party. And I tell you, it's interesting.
It's very good. It's very good. Yeah, it's really interesting to get a glimpse inside Parliament and a glimpse inside the Parliamentary Labour Party, and quite what that experience did for Thelma's outlook.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. I think the Labour Party is a trap.
Yeah.
The Labour Party is a trap. It pretends to be a big tent.
Yeah.
But really, it's
a tiny tent.
It's stalling any potential progressive moves in this country, and it's a trap that works in conjunction with our terrible electoral system.
Absolutely.
So you'll hear Thelma get into this a lot.
Yeah.
Do the voters, do the left wing voters, do the working class voters really have nowhere else to go, or are there other political projects?
Yeah. Or can you just do like the thing I'm so impressed by with Thelma was she talked about how she was a head teacher for a very long time. I suppose, I don't know what you call it here, just a normal teacher, I suppose, before that. But she didn't have any really thing to do with politics before that. And then all of a sudden she was like, maybe I should, if I'm really trying to change things as a head teacher, maybe I should just become a politician. And then she did, and she won her election. And it's like, wow, okay, interesting. I'm not going to say it's that simple because I'm sure that she had to work very hard, but like impressive nonetheless. Very, very cool. And yeah, and as you said, her outlook and her insight into what things are actually like in Parliament and in Westminster is fascinating. So yeah, very, very interesting. And we'll get a glimpse into that as well as where the North begins. You'll finally get an answer to that question a little later on, which is very exciting. And yeah,
I feel like only about at tops like a third of our audience is British. Yeah, it's with my guess. So like the people will even discover that the North is a thing at all.
Yeah, I know. Before I came out here, every single British person I met, they'd tell me where they're from, and I'd be like, "Is that near London?" I was like, how far away is that from London? So maybe I'm a Westminster guy. I don't know. But yeah, huge, Dan, massive, mammoth thank you to Thelma for coming on. Folks, do yourself a favor. Stop listening to this podcast right now and go listen to her podcast. Because above all, as we say in the interview, she's a fellow podcaster. Her and a fellow named Tom have a podcast called Thelma and Tom Look Left. And they interview some pretty awesome people. They interview John McDonnell, all sorts of great people coming up. Rebecca Long Bailey.
They've got an interview with Clive Lewis coming up quite soon.
Yeah, ooh, a little sneak peek. That's
I don't know whether that's inside a podcaster talk. Maybe I'm talking outside of school. I don't know.
We took the podcaster's oath never to reveal that.
I mean, she said it on air, so. Yes, yeah. Check out the description. The link will be there.
The link will be in the description.
Yeah. We promise. We hope.
We promise. Dan, look at us. We interviewed a former member of Parliament. Have we made it?
We're going up in the world.
We're going up.
Yeah.
We'll say nothing of our former guests. I mean, we peaked with Tom. I think we can say that. And then now we're definitely at similar levels here. Anything more to say?
Yeah, I think we should stop blabbering on and give the mic and the floor to Thelma.
Oh, really quickly. I'll cut out that awkward pause in the middle. We should also say, if you want to see Dan and I sit very close to each other in the video version of this interview, that will be up on YouTube. The full live stream interview that we did with her, so you'll get to see all of our beautiful, lovely faces. Check that out. Go on YouTube and type in auxiliary statements. You know how to do that. Find it.
Yeah. And subscribe.
Because
we on 84? I want to get to 100, guys. Come on. I want to get to 100.
We're very close.
Yeah.
Rate 5 stars and check out again, we have other interviews. You can look them up there. We've got a video on the viable system model. It's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to stoop to a new low, which I've never done before.
Oh God.
I'm gonna have a call to action.
Oh my God.
I hear podcasters all the time being like, leave us a rating on iTunes, which I would quite like you to do, or hit that little heart button if you're listening on SoundCloud, because I know some of you do that.
You freaks.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Follow us on the
I don't know. Just massage my ego a little bit.
Yeah,
quite nice.
And also to whoever that person was that left us that iTunes review a while ago. I get the feeling we know who you are. I don't actually have any idea who you are. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. It means the world.
It means the world. All right, on with the interview. Thelma, thank you so much for coming on our show, our little tiny show. We hope you're doing all right today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to join you. And I'm very much in favour of supporting independent especially left-wing media. So
Absolutely.
I wish you, have you only just got together to launch this? Or
You'd think that, but we've actually been doing it for about, I don't know, gosh, since November.
Yeah, well, yeah, a little bit earlier, October maybe.
So,
This
well,
will be episode 32. So
new.
yeah, so
Yeah,
like
I wish you
32
well.
weekly episodes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It's fun. We're having fun doing it, and it's growing slowly, but.
Well, that's the thing. You know, I do the podcast with Tom Widdicombe. We have Thelma and Tom Look Left, and we just really enjoy it every week.
We really enjoy your show as well. We absolutely love it. All the guests you have on and everything. And I think it's fair to say that while we respect you as for everything done with the Labour Party and with the Northern Independence Party as well, we also just consider you a fellow podcaster. So
yeah,
that's
well,
the highest accolade, being a podcaster.
You can learn new skills, and I never saw myself as a podcast host, but there you go. So I've gone from teacher, head teacher, MP, and now podcast host.
Well, it's only going up. So I guess we can just go ahead and start there. Dan and I, we were kind of just looking over your career trajectory, and we were really interested in kind of the way that you, as you say, kind of went from head teacher to MP to now being such a kind of like pivotal member of the Northern Independence Party. Before we get into kind of the politics of all of that and what made you leave the Labour Party and more questions about what you're doing currently, could you just run us through your career trajectory for people who might not know and what brought you from each thing?
Politics? Do you want me to go as far back as when I was a teacher?
Sure.
I mean, if you feel like it's worthwhile or if it's influenced your political career, because it's hard to imagine being a head teacher doesn't influence how you see politics and what you want to achieve in politics.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I was always into politics, and I was a member of the Labour Party for nearly 40 years before I left. And as a teacher and head teacher, I mean, I loved my career in education and still very interested and involved in education. But my last job before I left and went devoted myself almost completely to politics was in a school in a deprived area with a Sure Start centre. So it served a community that were, many of them really struggling, a lot of it in work poverty. And this was at the beginning of austerity, if you like. So I'm sure it's far, far worse now. Michael Gove became Secretary of State for Education, and you just saw the funding cuts start straight away with projects like Sure Start, family outreach, all of those kind of things. It became a culture of targets and tests. And the work that we were doing that was really reaping benefits with the family outreach and multi-agency working and all of those things. And you could see it making a difference. I mean, we didn't go far enough and further enough and far enough with Labour as it was then, but it was making a difference. And as soon as Gove came in, that culture changed. As a head teacher, I was there to lead a team of staff in a certain direction, and my own value base and my own educational philosophy didn't sit with Gove's ideology. And I would have felt hypocritical to have been asking my staff to do something, and indeed to be delivering a curriculum at the time was really broad and balanced and was narrowing to deliver this, as I say, culture of targets and tests. And so I decided I couldn't live with myself doing that. Academisation was coming in. I didn't agree with that. And I'm at a meeting tomorrow fighting the closure of a school that's part of a MAT, and that's part of the academisation. I'm still fighting that battle now. But seeing that poverty firsthand and the impact on, a child's well-being as well as their learning, and their mental health and emotional well-being, that's what really made me decide I can't really change this. Even as a head, I can't change the system, but politics is about bringing about change, and that's what got me into saying, right, I'm not just going to give out leaflets here. Head teacher's a tough job, but I discovered that being an MP is a really tough job too. But it was very good preparation for the life of a member of parliament. So I devoted myself to activism, and as you saw, was elected in 2017, and it was a privilege to be an MP for 2.5 years, not long enough and highly frustrating. But you probably can see too that I've not given up. And in some ways, I feel that I've got more of a voice. I mean, in terms of the social media platform, it's gone through the roof, really, the followers I've got on Twitter and the number of interviews I've had. And so I'm kind of thinking sometimes these things happen for a reason. And even though I was devastated when I lost the Combe Valley seat, I'm now feeling no longer in Labour, and so glad every day that Labour currently do something where I think, thank God, I really don't have to cover and pretend that I agree with this. I couldn't live with myself at the moment, and if I was made to actually say, I think you're being complicit if you don't call out what Labour are not doing in opposition. So yeah, I left Labour, and I feel liberated because of that, because I can speak out more, and I think I'm getting that message about democratic socialism out more in a way than I did as an MP, which is a bit ironic, really, but it's true. So do you want to know about when I was in Parliament, or?
Yeah, I think just real quick, sorry, I'd just like to know, coming from that angle that you did, like coming from a head teacher where you really saw the changes that needed to happen, what did you find the culture like in Westminster and in Parliament, in the Labour Party as it existed then? Was it what you expected? Was it slightly more bureaucratic?
The thing is, if I'm honest, I've found out more about it since I've left, because I was new to it all. The first few months you go to Westminster, if you're not an experienced politician, which I wasn't, I was a teacher, and you're learning the ropes. You're even learning how to find your way around Westminster, and I soon became a member of the Education Select Committee, and that for me was really important, because I felt that as a member of the Select Committee, my previous career, I could actually contribute with lived experience of the different issues, many of which were the different inquiries that I was involved with, and I found that it was massively hard work, but I found that incredibly rewarding and interesting, and hopefully I got that voice on behalf of teachers and communities and schools. So that was really interesting. But as well as that, I was Parliamentary Private Secretary to John MacDonald, who was then the Shadow Chancellor. So it was a lot of work, because obviously there were two roles as well as being a constituency MP. And my job as John's PPS, and it was a privilege to be his PPS, he's an amazing man, and an amazing team at the time, the Shadow Treasury team, what was to be the communicator, if you like, the bridge between the Shadow Treasury team and John and the backbenchers and the PLP. So it was really important to me to cultivate harmony, if you like, and to make sure there was effective communication between the Shadow Treasury team and the PLP. And while I was there, I do hope that I did a decent job of that. And even though I was very much of the left, at that time I was genuine about wanting to bring the PLP together, genuine about saying, okay, yes, I'm on the left, but we have to do this together. And I did stand up at a PLP meeting on a Monday night, and it's pretty scary when you do that, because you have the Lords in there as well, and all the and it's the committee room is like a debating chamber, a mini debating chamber, and you're opposite your own members, but it's very staged and formal. But I stood up and I did say that the main thing that unites us is social justice, And we must remember that. That's the core purpose of any socialist and of any Labour MP. And I did speak on that, and I spoke about Jeremy being a leader, and it always seems easy when you're not it. But when I was head, I remember feeling very lonely at times because you're the one making those decisions. And I reminded them that Jeremy was very alone making those decisions. So I didn't just leave and moan about the PLP. I really tried to speak in my own small way to bring people together. And it was only, and the culture, you could see that everybody's very polite with, generally very polite with everybody in Parliament. But you just sense there were certain debates where some wouldn't come in and make a contribution, and it was kind of low level undermining a lot of the time, subtle things that when I was there, it wasn't always apparent to me because I was new, and I couldn't believe that people on our own side wouldn't want it to work. I couldn't conceive having, being a socialist, I couldn't conceive that people within our own party might not want it to work. And it wasn't always apparent to me, this low level undermining. And in a way, that's what I mean about since I've come out, and some of the evidence that's been submitted to the Ford inquiry has been revealed, and people I've spoken to since, you realise that loads of stuff was happening to undermine what we were trying to achieve. And I suppose in a way I'm more angry than I was because I wasn't sure what was happening. I was so busy with the Education Select Committee doing my job in my constituency and supporting John and the Shadow Treasury team. And I, perhaps naively, I don't know, I didn't believe that people would be purposefully doing that. But the longer I was there, the more I saw these just subtle low-level stuff at first, but obviously more going on. And this is why I do feel quite cross that we've not had the report from the Ford inquiry, because I think that shows a lack of democracy and lack of transparency in the party. That's how I felt the culture was. PLP. Sure. That on a personal level, on the surface, I got on with most people, or tried to, and got on very well with the Shadow Treasury team and some of my other colleagues. There's some lovely people still in the PLP, but obviously there's a number that didn't I don't think, behaved honourably. And I think some continue to behave, in my opinion, dishonourably.
Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating to hear. It's interesting to see inside the walls of Parliament a little bit through your eyes, because it's something that's so often veiled to people on the outside, kind of thing, what that culture is like, or particularly in the meetings of the Labour Party kind of thing. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about your time in Parliament. It might be a little bit of a footnote, but it may even be an erroneous piece of information on your Wikipedia page. I don't know. But I wanted to ask you something about the No Border Guards pledge. Is it correct that you may have signed a pledge about?
Oh yes, about people, asylum seekers, and
yes, maybe my understanding is as an MP, not like protecting maybe asylum seekers who are inside in your constituency from deportation, I suppose. I mean, I don't need you to speak at length about it if it's not something that. It was very curious, and I hadn't ever heard about it before, and I was just wondering how many people had signed that, and whether that's quite a common thing.
Still, not quite at the moment, but I still support Destitute Asylum Seekers Huddersfield Dash, and the clothing project for Sanctuary Kirklees. So before I became an MP, I volunteered for Dash. So obviously had relationships with the people who support people who are placed in our community, and some of them, are absolutely destitute. So I had personal experience of working with asylum seekers and absolutely heartbreaking circumstances for many of them. So when this came up, I mean, obviously as an MP, you sign a lot of EDMs and different petitions, but this in particular, we were being asked to report people who've been placed in the community if there were questions about settled status, etc. And I didn't see my role as policing people, but for me, every human being has equal worth, and for me, it was important to say that is not my role. My role is to make sure that people are safe and housed and treated with respect and dignity. So that's why I signed that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. It's something that maybe I don't think about very often, the role of the MP to represent the people in their community and going to that extent kind of thing. It's laudable, I think, anyway, of an MP to sort of go to those lengths or put their constituents first in that way kind of thing.
Well, I mean, the other thing, I feel really strongly about is the no recourse to public funds as well. When people they arrive with many skills, lots of professionals, the contribution they can make to our communities and societies, and then they're not allowed, they're not allowed to seek support to enable them to then make that contribution. And it's so short-sighted and so narrow-minded and so callous and cruel, I think. And I sometimes, I have to keep going, but I sometimes despair about our society, But yeah, that's another thing I feel quite strongly about. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's something I noticed on my visa, is that I saw that on the back when I got it, and I was like, I wonder. I kind of didn't think twice about it, the no recourse to public funds, but I was like, I wonder why. I wonder what the point is, because it seems kind of counterintuitive almost. But
it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like I'm very much for universal basic income. And that again is so short-sighted. I mean, furlough is what that is really, this temporary universal basic income for a lot of people. But if people have more income, even if it's low income, they spend it. They spend in our shops, our businesses, and that profits the local community. And it's really short-sighted that we've got now, this in-work poverty we've got, and we've got people who are waiting with a begging bowl just to meet their basic needs and queuing up at food banks, Anyway, I could talk about that forever. It's just wrong. Yeah.
No argument from us.
Definitely not from me.
So I suppose you have already outlined the process of your disillusionment with the Labour Party. I wonder whether you'd outline what led you to make that break, and then also maybe what made the new project of the Northern Independence Party seem appealing to you, I suppose, and maybe what the Northern Independence Party means by democratic socialism, and what that political project might look like, I suppose.
Yeah, lots of things. I mean, the immediate thing when I announced that, I was leaving the Labour Party was people said, oh, it's because Jeremy Corbyn's lost the whip, or, she's angry because she's lost a seat. And there were, all these theories. But it wasn't one thing. It wasn't one thing. It was like a gradual process. And when Keir Starmer became leader, and he stood on those 10 pledges that he made. One was to unite the party, of course. First of all, Rebecca Long-Bailey, who I was informally kind of working with and was friendly with when she was Shadow Secretary of State for Education. I just thought she was amazing in that role. It was short-lived, of course, but she was just amazing. That she was listening, she was intelligent, she was informed, and what she didn't know, she'd ask about. She wasn't arrogant. She went to the professionals. She wanted to work with professionals. She wanted to work with the teaching unions, and I felt really positive. Ever since I'd lost the election and Jeremy hadn't been leader, I felt really positive, and I was positive and genuine about wanting to support Keir Starmer. Really, really was genuine. But then when Becky was sacked from the front bench, that for me was the first blow, because she was one of the few front benchers who was a left winger for a start. And if you look at what Joe Biden's, I don't agree with everything with Joe Biden, but he did realise he needed to work with the left. And he is currently trying to do that and engage with Bernie, in that way, and the left in America. But Keir just doesn't seem to want to engage at all. But it started with Rebecca Long-Bailey being sacked. Then we had the human rights bills going through Parliament. What we call the Spy Cops bill, the covert human intelligence bill.
Could it sound more sinister?
Well, it does, doesn't it? And the overseas operations bill. All of these, currently we've got the right to protest bill, or not protest bill going through. So all of these bills, to me, the human rights bills, that naturally for me, the Labour Party should not be going with. And when I just saw, and then of course him really not showing opposition in terms of what was happening with COVID, saying that children should be back in school, agreeing with the government, all of these things, I was thinking, what? So it was one thing after another, and then of course Jeremy not having the whip suspended. And then having gone through the disciplinary process and what have you, there was political interference, in my opinion, with the NEC ruling, and the whip has still, to this day, not been returned to Jeremy. Although I've gone so far in my disaffection with Labour, I would prefer Jeremy to stay out. I know the demands to return the whip to Jeremy, but I would much prefer Jeremy to stay out and to work at growing the democratic socialist movement, which is what I'm about now, which I'll come to later. So it was a lot of things, and at first when I left, I felt dreadful. I kept having to do these interviews to explain why, and it was very hard for me. It was very kind of emotional time, really. But bit by bit, I realised the more that Labour behaved in a way, and the leadership of Labour behaved in a particular way, I realised this has been the right thing for me. And even though I was still in communication with a number of people in Parliament, and I don't judge them. If some have decided to fight, if you like, from within, it's our party, some say, and we're not leaving it. It will come full circle, and it will. But I'm afraid I couldn't stay in the party. So obviously, a few months out of the party, doing a lot of interviews, getting involved with different projects to do with education, etc. So still very busy with different projects, as I say. And then I saw on social media some tweets from Philip Proudfoot and this new party that was being suggested. In fact, before NIP, I think it was before, it was, I met with Alex Mays, who is the founder of the Breakthrough Party based in Manchester. So I'd actually met both youngish men, had both, and currently I'm still working with both of them informally, just as much support as I can give. But amazing respect for both of them. But I had already been in discussions with Alex May, and I'd done an interview with Alex because he asked me to. And so I knew about the Breakthrough Party actually before I knew about NIP. Then I saw the post from, and I knew the by-election was coming up in Hartlepool. And so I said, look, if you want some support, if you want some help, I had a Zoom meeting with himself and the chair of NIP. If you want some support, then I will give any support that you need. And they suggested that if I could endorse the party, etc., it would help with the, well, I suppose the PR, the publicity for this new party, which I agreed to do, and tweeted and did all of that. But really engaged with Philip from the word go. Really realised there was intellect behind the thinking, the policy making. Very democratic as well, in the manifesto that was being put together was in consultation with the membership. And I really like the inclusivity of it. And I really like the thought that was going into it as well. And as I say, the intellect in it. But then as the by-election, and it just evolved that there were two other people who went for being the candidate. I hadn't originally intended to be the candidate for NIP. It came about from them saying, if you are our candidate, that will help this party to be put on the map, as it were, and it will give us such a start. And I've had to take it on the chin from people who trolls, and have to say it's Labour people who are really vicious. The worst kind of trolling, I have to say, has come from centrists who are just having a go all the time about me standing, splitting the Labour vote when you look at what happened. But I knew perfectly well there was absolutely no chance of us winning. I knew that I was putting myself out there, but I knew we'd get the bigger interviews. I knew we'd get the profile. And so in a way, I kind of sacrificed myself to do it. But now you see people who are, they're obviously threatened by these smaller parties, because I'm fronting quite a bit of it, and Philip is, and Alex is for Breakthrough, but NIP, because of our social media platform and the strength of that, and it's very young. I'm the honorary oldie, you see. It's a young but inclusive party, so on that, there were 16 candidates in the Hartlepool by-election, a number of independents. Because the party is still with the Electoral Commission, seem to be sitting on the application for registration. I don't know what's going on there.
I saw that today. It's still not registered. And
still not registered.
Which is quite shocking.
Why, but that wasn't a help, because on that 16 candidates, there's just my name. For anybody who doesn't know left politics, would say, who's this woman? It's not.
It's a real shame if you're trying to build the platform of the party, you can't then stand under the banner of the party, or at least appear on the ballot. So people have to learn your name specifically. If people had have seen Northern Independence Party next to my name, I think some more would have got it. We wouldn't have got thousands and thousands of votes, but we'd have got more. So obviously, what my people who don't like me or feel threatened by the movement are using the 250 votes and the loss of the deposit as an excuse to have a go at the moment. People who get politics and what the electoral system is understand what happened there, and it is part of
why I'm involved with NIP is not just NIP. I'm involved with the development of a democratic socialist movement. So I'm working with a number of the smaller left parties, and my job, I suppose, bringing the old head teacher back in, is to bring people together. And I'm trying to do that in a small way. That we've had our first private meeting, and we've got another one in 2 weeks, in about 2 weeks, about discussions about how we can work together. Do we stand people in the future? Where do we stand people? For me, this idea of a progressive left alliance is what's really winding up Labour and the centrists in particular, because Mandelson said, well, they've nowhere else to go. They've got to vote Labour. They've got, well, they have got, and they will have somewhere to go. And younger people, especially like yourselves, you were the ones I'm doing this for, because it's you that's being impacted on, or your age group in particular, the most, well, in the most negative way, with no affordable things I took for granted, and people older than me, the baby boomers, took for granted the free education, the no tuition fees, affordable housing, guaranteed jobs. Those were taken for granted. And your generation cannot. That's been taken away from you at the moment, and that is what the democratic socialist movement and what Labour should be addressing. And that's why I'm so thankful I'm not with Labour at the moment, because I just think, this is not what socialism is about. So I'm quite excited now. I feel like I've really got, and standing for NIP was great. I mean, people who are having a go, they're not going to make me feel negative about that campaign, because that group of people that have formed NIP are wonderful socialists, and the spirit of that campaign was brilliant. I enjoyed it more than, well, I loved the 2017 campaign with Jeremy and that manifesto, but since then, and before that, I really didn't enjoy. There was a lot of with Labour that it needs systemic change. The whole structure of the party needs changing. It's campaigning. It's so coercive. It's so targets and testing, and it's a bit like the Govian school model. It's kind of, how many doors have you knocked on? This is what you're going to say. This doesn't work. That's why we had that whole group of activists in 2017 out there, because people believed in the manifesto, and people came together in their thousands, and that's what's hemorrhaging from the Labour Party now, I believe. But what I felt with NIP was that belief in the democratic process of policy making, and the belief in that we can change things. And it's just an emerging party, but it's growing in numbers and membership, and we've got members all over the country, because you've got a lot of northerners that have had to leave their home to get the work, and so they still have that interest in investment in the north and the heritage. So it was a great campaign with wonderful people, and I don't regret doing it. I do sometimes when those trolls are having a go at me, I must admit, but
tell you what, Thelma, just block them. Just hit the block button.
Well, I started blocking. I didn't used to block. I used to kind of mute, and but the thing is, I always try and be really, really courteous on, I might have a go because I'm making a point, but I always try and be really courteous on social media. But what was interesting was recently, because I made a comment about the by-election in Backley and Spen, that it was it was like they're not even intelligent enough to organise a pile-on that isn't so obvious that they've all been on a WhatsApp group, because it was put out about a couple of days before, and it was a response 2 days later where they all had a go at me at the same time. And it's just it's so apparent that it'd been organised.
There's clearly nothing organic about their movement.
It was just, people say to me, you must be doing something good if you've rattled the cage to that extent, because they're quite funny. They say NIP are nothing, you only got 250 votes, and then they'll say you are destroying the Labour Party. I think, what am I doing?
And then clearly spend an entire evening atting you all day. You're clearly deserving of a lot more attention than they want to say.
But if you hold, I mean, the thing is, I believe if you hold, I'm not saying I don't make mistakes sometimes you make a wrong judgment call. I'm human, but what I try and do is admit if I think I've done something wrong and apologise. I think, like we saw Howard Beckett do the other day over a tweet, what a leader he will be. I think if as leading Unite as a union, I think he's a man of integrity and strength and courage. But I admit if I make a mistake with things. But I honestly think if you are authentic and I have right on your side and you believe you're doing the best for other people, then it spurs me on. And so when I see these people doing what they're doing and I can see that it's organised, I won't say that if I'm tired and I've had a tough day that it doesn't get to you. It does, but I try and rise above it, because I think to myself, well, I've lived my life educating and caring for children, and then believing in socialism and social justice, and just look at my track record, and I do still believe in what I'm doing, and I'm going to carry on, because like Tony Benson, you've got that fire of justice in your heart, and the struggle continues, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting strategy to be authentic. I think that's maybe one that a lot of people could learn from. I had one question about, I'm really interested in kind of the coalition that you're talking about, building with different smaller democratic socialist parties. And it is interesting, when I first came across you all on Twitter, I'm from the States, and
whereabouts are you from?
I'm from a little town just outside of Los Angeles, so California.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Yeah.
And you're here with this weather.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping, at least down here, Dan and I are down south, we're hoping we won't get much more rain in the future. We'll see. But it's funny, like, when I first came across you all on Twitter, I think I saw the name Northern Independence Party, and I wasn't necessarily expecting you all to be democratic socialists. And so I think it's interesting. And I wonder if maybe a lot of people, if they had put the name of the party on the ballot, I wonder kind of how a lot of people would have thought of that if they'd never come across you before, or really known what the NIP stands for. So I'm kind of interested in this balance between, like, I suppose just as an outsider, what maybe makes the North kind of, at least in theory, kind of like a bastion of democratic socialism, and why did you really tie those two things together? Northern independence and socialism.
Yeah, I think I think the independence, I'm going to be really frank with you, and Philip and I have had quite lengthy discussions about this, that the independence bit is the tricky bit, because my original thoughts have always been for federalism and localism, and it's taking that concentration and control, certainly on the economy in particular, from Westminster, and that decision making from Westminster. And at first, we had some lively discussions, Philip and I, about the independence, because I was suggesting it's maybe one step too far, that for people to say, well, we've got poverty down south, we've got, but then I'm seeing what the SNP, who had I think, well, certainly UKIP had fewer votes than NIP had in that by-election. But SNP, so few votes just a few years ago. And look how they've grown. Within 2 years, Scotland could be independent. Wales could follow suit. I know Labour have done okay, but that's because of socialist policies with Mark. We could have a united Ireland. That leaves Little England still run by Johnson and Co. And the northern region, just think about that for northerners, where I always say the graft's done up north and the profit from it goes down to Westminster and then we're left with crumbs from the Westminster table back up north. So bit by bit, I've been kind of converted to the idea that it really depends what happens with the devolved powers. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm kind of thinking, watch this space with this. I mean, short term, for me, it would be that idea of like Germany, that federalism, that idea of social enterprise, community wealth building with the localism, and the funding decisions made regionally and locally. But long term, that may be a necessity if Scotland are independent, Wales is independent, Ireland is united. All of these things are possible. And what irony is that when you've got people wrapping themselves in the Union Jack, and those very people are going to tear that apart with the way that they have behaved and their policies and actions. So I think it's really, really interesting what's happening with politics at the moment. So a long answer to a short question, the independence part, I've moved towards and thinking this is the long-term goal, that it may be necessary for people in the north to seek that independence. And NIP, or as Philip talks about, is Northumbria with his flag. It's not, we might mock and joke about it now, but actually, let's see what happens with Scotland and Wales and Ireland. I do think it's very interesting. I think the other bit of it that you were asking me about how it sits with socialism kind of thing, I get that as well, because you can say that, but I do believe in the ability to self-determine, and I do believe that the North in particular has always been internationalist and has welcomed, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, if you look at what's happened through history, has welcomed people, and we've been talking already about asylum seekers and making people citizens of the world, isn't it? It's Thomas Paine stuff. So I think that that is not what NIP is about. It is not UKIP. It is inclusive, and it is welcoming, and it is internationalist, and we're through Brexit now. We're not really. I mean, the government would like to pretend we are. There's all sorts of problems with that. But I think that, we would want the most positive relationship with all countries of the world, but especially with Europe. So I think that needs saying. The independence is a challenge for many, and some have said to me, "Oh, Thelma, it's one step too far," But I can see that this is something for the future, and I think we need to see how this pans out.
I think it's definitely a good idea good strategy to pitch a radical demand even in advance of what you think you can get in the short term. And also, I think it provides a very good name for a party, and also it's a very pithy sort of shorthand explanation of what the party is for or about, kind of thing. Yes. You could go around the week really trying to explain for devolution or for federalism, but
that's right.
It's definitely a clear pitch, I guess.
Yeah, well, I was interviewed by Politics Joe, and it was kind of like one of the questions. It's like out UKIP in UKIP, but far left. Yeah. They had a very simple message, get Brexit done kind of thing, get us out of Europe. And this is like, we want independence for the North. And people in the South have said, and we've had some Labour politicians on the left say, but we have poverty in parts of London. We have poverty in the coastal regions. Yes, of course we do. But we have to start somewhere, ending inequality. And as a Northerner, I'm saying that North-South divide has gone on decade after decade, and we need to address it. So I'm not negating the fact that there's poverty and inequality across our country and across the world, but this is the starting point. Interesting. But moving on to the smaller parties and what I'm trying to do at the moment. As I said, I actually worked with Alex Mays from Breakthrough before Philip. I don't think a lot of people are aware.
I've never heard of Breakthrough. No.
But Breakthrough, fabulous group of people again, based in, and I can see Alex and Philip are getting a really good relationship there, working together. Breakthrough based, as I say, in Manchester, looking hopefully for the future at the Amersham and Chesham. They're standing Carla in Gregory, I think she's called, in Amersham and Chesham, which is a Tory seat, but it's their first, and again, dipping their toe into it all as a new party. But really well thought through, again, democratic. They've just issued their policy pledges this week. So it's parties like NIP, Breakthrough, Left Unity are involved, Tusk, Resist, all of these parties, and there's more, of course, who are showing interest. And Compass as well, who previously were just involved with Labour, but now, are in talks with lots of the parties on the left. So, we've had one private meeting, and we are going to meet again. The decision was made to stand a candidate from Breakthrough at the Chesham and Amersham in the forthcoming by-election. I've been getting all this trolling for, why have you commented on the Batley and Spen? The irony is that my voice was used to say we shouldn't be standing a candidate in Batley and Spen because the far right could make headway there. So we need to be thoughtful and sensitive about where we stand candidates, because we may not be happy with Labour, but it certainly is not my intention to enable far right candidates to scoop up the votes. And I think there's some irony in Labour centrists having a go at me, making out I'm undermining Batley and Spen, when I've actually spoken up to prevent the smaller parties from splitting the left vote, which, is, they're unbelievable. So the idea is we're in talks, also, obviously not a political party, but interested in what the discussions are about is the Peace and Justice Project, which is Jeremy Corbyn's kind of project. So they're not a party, but they're projects that they're involved in, are very interesting for the movement, as it were. So I think it's quite exciting what could grow from this. And I think it, in a way, what we're hoping is that it pushes Labour to address the socialist agenda, because at the moment they seem so far away from it. So what we hope in this progressive alliance of the left, or PAL, as I've called it, is the kind of growing movement to say, look, this is this is what we believe in. And if we stand candidates in these different seats as they come up, then it's giving people a choice. It's the Mandelson saying they've nowhere to go. They've got to vote Labour. Well, no, they don't anymore, because there's these young growing movement that actually is saying socialists have got somewhere to go and somewhere to vote and someone to vote for that is going to represent their interests and their concerns and their beliefs.
Absolutely. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's coming up on time for us, I think.
It is. Yeah. I think we have one more question for you.
Yeah, go on.
I told my partner that I would ask this because she's actually from Huddersfield. And I'm actually going up there on this weekend, which will be very exciting. And she told me
you might even get some sunshine.
Yeah, I know, exactly. She told me the proper way to pronounce Slawit, so I don't sound like an idiot.
Slawit, yes. Yeah,
Slawit.
I'm in Linthwaite, which is Linthwaite, and yes, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, our question is to actually define for us, to put it to bed once and for all where the North starts.
Well, the only way I can say is that where Philip has defined
Sure.
Northumbria,
Yeah,
knows Philip's definition. So that's the where the Peak District, High Peak is, and Cheshire along there. So it's along there. So, but when I was in Hartlepool, I talked to this wonderful old gentleman. And he said, well, where are you actually from? So I was born in Manchester. I said, and I've lived in Combe Valley for 30 years. And he said, that's not north, that's south.
My joke.
It's relative, isn't it?
My joke has always been that the north starts 20 miles south of whoever you're asking and where they live. Kind of thing.
Yeah. That's right. That's
I was once I was once told when I first got here by a Southerner that the North starts in Luton. So what do I know?
Yeah. It is all relative. He was quite genuine when he said, "You're not Northern," Manchester North. So yeah, but well, I hope you've found what I've had to say useful.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
You both. I've got our podcast with Clive Lewis tomorrow.
That's
we're going to be asking him about, I want him to share his vision for Progressive Alliance. He and I are we're good friends, and his idea of a Progressive Alliance is a little bit different to mine, though, because I think he's thinking more about the Greens and the Liberals, and whereas I think we'll need a discussion on that tomorrow.
Well, we stand with you on that sentiment, I think. But I do appreciate his campaigning for electoral reform, which is something I wish we could have
definitely. Clive's intellect, and he's open-minded to the fact Labour can't stay the way they are. That's the thing about Clive, that he, as I say, he has that intellect, but he listens, and he takes on board, this idea, of constitutional change, electoral reform, and that Labour cannot just stay as it was. So a lot of respect for Clive. Yeah. Anyway, good luck with everything, you two.
Yeah,
thank you. And you with your podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
End the broadcast quick.
The music you heard this episode was Music to Kill Bad People To by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you like this song, you can check it out and much, much more on their Bandcamp at kinggizzard.bandcamp.com. Be sure and follow us up on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you like what you heard, be sure and tune in next week for some more commie discussion. Till next time.